So plants and people, I think we share a symbiotic relationship. And if you look at people and plants, as it has been mentioned, we have traditional use, food, fiber, shelter, medicine, cosmetic, natural defense, cultural expression. And what are the new emerging sectors? We're increasing talking about nutraceuticals, biofortification, energy, bagasse, jatropha, corn for ethanol. There is a rising demand for plant-based medicine, extracts, and of course we are seeing an increasing source of revenue for issues of touching on organics, for example. And for sub-Saharan Africa, I think medicinal plant is perhaps the only source of therapeutics. And if you talk about the issue of conservation, we see that this is an area which actually will have to focus the attention of Africans. When you see, for example, that only 272 species of flowering plants have been described, and each year we're adding 2,000 new species every year, as per the index QNZs. But what is the status of biodiversity in the world? If we look at some of the figures, it's absolutely appalling. 33% account for 1.4% of the surface of the Earth in vulnerable hotspots. And if you look at the threats, we find that the threats are coming from everywhere. And these are some of the figures which explain these. And so what are the key challenges for us scientists and for us entrepreneurs is that science needs to find solutions that are economically viable, socially relevant, environmentally benign, and I think here we're increasingly coming onto the political will which is needed to address all these. So what are the world's biodiversity hotspots? Unfortunately, number 13 should have been read as well, that's South Africa, Karoo. And we find that the flora of the SIDS, the small island developing states, are critically threatened. And Africa, if we look at our continent homing into there, we find that the calculated loss per year is 1% compared to the global average of 0.6%. Unfortunately, many of the medicinal plants would have been extinct by the time we would have seen them. Unfortunately, the trends are showing that it is now slowing down. And one key area, one key convention rather, which has been key in addressing this, has been the Rio Convention of 1992, which had put out the Convention for Biological Diversity, and this has been the cornerstone in addressing many issues in terms of adding value to our biodiversity. And the last bullet is very important because we should not have, the precautionary principle holds that even when there is a threat to biodiversity, lack of scientific certainty should not hold back protective actions. So what's the issue of conservation? Why do we need to see it as two sides of the same coin? There is, first of all, the ex situ. The ex situ is, for example, the Doomsday Vault, which is now present in the Norwegian permafrost, which is now the gene bank for many plants across the world. And this is an insurance against incremental loss, against catastrophic loss. But I think where the African farmers still have something to tell us is they are more concerned with in situ conservation because many staples do not produce seeds. So we still need to go back to basics and learn from them the traditional way of conserving a lot of the germplasm, which ensures our food security. So I'll home in now quickly to the medicinal plant, the big picture. And here we see that plants are still nature's medicine, and 33% are trees, and out of which tropical and subtropical Africa have something like 45,000, contributing 25% of the global pool of plant genetic resources, and of course significant in world trade of genetic material. And if you go by WHO figures, over 80% still depend on medicinal plants, and out of which 60% of the drugs which come on the market, 25% come straight from medicinal plants. So what is there modern day relevance of medicinal plant? The answer is a big resounding yes. Because then again, where the paradox lies is that even though we have seen such diversity in Africa, only 83 of the 1,100 leading plants, of the leading medicinal plants, come from African origin. So when we think about these plants, we think of Catharanthus, the Madagascan periwinkle, which has given medicine very important anti-cancer drugs. We find the Hapagophyton, the devil's claw from Namibia, which has given, again, medicine a very important anti-inflammatory. And we have the latest one from Central Africa, which is the Revolvia vomitoria, which has given, of course, medicine a very potent antihypertensive. So, do we have alternatives to allopathic medicine? South Africa and this, for example, the Khoisan people have again given us a very important plant for application of mental health condition. Could this be our answer? Could this be the African answer to valerian or hypericum or Prozac? So what is the potential there? And in fact, if you look at the market for this sector, we are talking already of $70 billion per year. So we have increasingly been talking about the policy issue. With so much diversity, why is Africa absent? Africa is absent from the international scene because, first of all, we do not produce as per the needed technical standards for plants. So this is a major barrier if we are going to access markets. And I think the last one, I think, is much more significant because we're increasingly comparing ourselves to Chinese and Indians. Chinese and Indian government have formally recognized their traditional knowledge. This has been documented, codified. It is now formed the basis of further development, reverse pharmacology, you name it, it's there. Official recognition from government. Now, to address this issue of technical specification, we have produced the very first edition of the African Herbal Pharmacopoeia in 2010, and here we have federated all the African partners across the continent to work on these 51 medicinal plants, which are considered to be important by the stakeholders in Africa. And this is the first runner-up, if I say, to the first edition of the OAU African Medicinal Plant Standard, published in the 1960s. So again, we need to put value to what we're doing, and we need, of course, to put our money where our mouth is. And this has been the impetus for creating this center, which is the Center for Phytotherapy Research, and where we would like to position ourselves as an interface between traditional knowledge, academia, and industry, so as to lead and develop partnership. I insist on the word partnership because Africa should not, as Emeka just said, Botswana, for example, we should not be always exporting raw material. Value has to be added in-house. And then we're talking about the generation of innovative research for active ingredients, because this is the basis for medicine, this is the basis for nutraceutical, this is the basis for cosmetics. So we need to add value to our own diversity. So what is the new agenda for sustainability? Because this is key if we are going to address the biodiversity sector. I think for medicinal plant, I can say that we capitalize on the momentum gain in the global conservation movement, and we must recognize that all actions are local. We counter the threats. We address habitat loss, alien species, climate change, which we cannot ignore. Fostering sustainable conservation, in situ, ex situ, natural capital, green medicine. Sharing of benefits. We are increasingly going towards ethical ways of doing things. Communities, women. Revamping the certificate process, because we talk about innovation. These are very innovative ways of adding value to our biodiversity. Equity, transparency, organic fair trade, halal, kosher, you name it. All these are very important certification processes which are coming our way. We should do it. So we mobilize knowledge for securing triple bottom line, people, planet, and profit, because we are increasingly talking about profit. We have to do it. Forge partnership, anchored in the common good for the benefit of all, and above all, became the voice of change. I think this is very, very important. We need to do that. We need to talk to ourselves first. So on this issue, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Amina. We're going to move over to the gentleman from MIT in just a moment, but Professor Amina, I need to ask you this question. I suppose it's not a surprise to most people that many of the astronauts in the NASA program went to MIT. Governments directly invest in innovation in places like Europe, in the United States. It has an interest in the outcome of research. I think the fear of many, as you talk about medicinal plants, Professor Amina, is that eventually or inevitably, you will find a big pharmaceutical company investing in the medicinal plant area, turning that medicinal plant into medicine, and then selling it back to us, and possibly building a school or a borehole in the community in which they took that plant medicine from, and expect to be thanked for it. I just wonder if there's a connection between the research facilities that you work in and have worked in for many years, and the government that should be a direct investor in the outcome of the result.
I'll just go back to what Emeka had just said. Unfortunately, or fortunately for me, when I started, again, the funds came from donors. So I got the funds from donors to actually start on creating a database. This database, we started doing it ourselves. And once the database was created, again, it was donor money that came in to actually invest in the laboratories. And fortunately, towards the end, when I started creating the center, this has been a holding created not by Mauritian, unfortunately, but by a French consortium. So, but now we are addressing an issue. The consortium, the company is incorporated in Mauritius, and the idea now is to add value to what we're doing before we start exporting. So I think, again, it's an example of we should put money where our mouth is. And this is where I think the issue of investing in our own resources, be it human capital or otherwise, should come from us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me open up the floor now to the gentleman from MIT, Julius Akinyemi, entrepreneur in residence at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The floor is yours, Julius.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I couldn't be more delighted. It's always nice to be back home. I'm always excited and passionate about being back home, so I'm kind of excited to be here. And I thank UNECA, AIF, and especially my good friend Aida for having me here. So all that said, let me start this way. Contrary to my good friend Amina in terms of how she got to where she is, I came from the public sector. I've been in corporate America for many years, and did a lot of things there. And then I came into academia because I strongly believe in innovation. And MIT didn't have an entrepreneur in residence before until I got there. And the key purpose for me is to be able to take technology from MIT and push that into developing countries, especially African countries, which is a continent that made me who I am today, and I couldn't be more grateful, and the minimum I could do is to be able to pay back. So all that said, I get to the activity very, very quickly. So since I'm talking about innovation and networked environment, I thought it would be very, very interesting for us to rethink and reevaluate where we are as far as our network is concerned. We've been very, very appreciative, and we've praised ourselves so much on the mobile technology side. And I will give you some facts, which we have to look at. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. And I will lay that foundation, and hopefully at the end of it, we will have a very, very good discussion. Okay? So, as you already saw in here, my first sentence is that internet, as we all know it, everybody thinks internet is a network and we just need to connect and do things. My own take on that is a little different these days. Internet, as we all know, are little pieces of technology sewn together to allow you to be able to have access and open access to a lot of things we never had before. So to me, it's no more a technology, it's not a network, it's a philosophy. We have to live it daily because it makes our life so different. And when you look at it either from mobile technology point of view or fixed technology point of view, we are accessing this open highway that gives us so much that we didn't have before. I could sit in the middle of my room and create products. But if we are in Africa and we can't do that and we want to compete in the world, we already have a baggage. So I will talk more about that, as we go along. So these are the things that we need to keep in mind as we talk about innovation. Innovation just doesn't happen in a vacuum. And, with great appreciation with what Aida just mentioned,